Finally, thank those providing the feedback, and maybe even plan future sessions so you can receive more feedback on a regular basis.
And feedback isn't always verbal. Sometimes it's more subtle. You have to pick up on it and react. In fact, action tip 25 says, continuously adjust to your audience throughout the presentation. This means you're constantly analyzing your listeners while you're speaking. You're checking for things like attentiveness, restlessness, excitement, or apathy. The trick is to adapt and adjust to these reactions. If you're getting negative vibes, you need to make some changes quickly. Obviously, this isn't easy. The best thing to do is try to pinpoint what is bothering your audience. Then take specific steps to deal with these concerns. You'll also want to check listener response in another way. It's action tip 26. Plan to use a checkup. This means we find out if the audience has understood and retained our message. Ask them review questions or ask them some thought-provoking questions.
How does this plan relate to what you're doing? Ask yourself, how would this work in your area?
The idea here is to get them thinking and talking about your presentation. And again, thank them for their comments, or say things like, good idea or good point. You may also ask them to summarize or demonstrate what we've been discussing. This forces them to get involved and gives you a definite indication of how well your message has been received.
Let's look now at action tip 27. Use frequent summaries. Summaries tie together your main points and help listeners organize and digest your message. These are like signposts telling people how far they've come. They're important since most people are rather poor listeners and sometimes miss things the first time round. So after making 2 or 3 points, restate these points to make sure your listeners get them. You'll find this kind of reinforcement very effective. We're now ready for the wrap-up of your presentation. This vital segment is dealt with in action tip 28. Use action endings to tell listeners what they need to remember. I'll start by summarizing your key points. Then restate your central theme. Let the listeners know why this information is so important. And then give them a clear action step, something they should do in regard to your message. Finally, end on a powerful note. It might be dramatic, motivating, poignant, or even humorous. The goal is to have them walking out of that room very impressed or moved by your presentation.
Let's look now at some things you can do to follow up your presentation. One of these is give your listeners an assignment. That's action tip 29. This is easily done, and most people won't fight it. It's effective because it gives the audience something to think about after the presentation. It doesn't have to be formal. For example, you can ask them to review their notes and give a summary report to someone else within 24 or 48 hours. This will motivate them to rethink the message. You can also ask them to take your ideas and implement them. And finally, recommend other sources of information about the topic, things like articles, books, movies. Another way to follow up is action tip 30. Give listeners something to take home. These are tangible reminders of your message. They include samples, outlines, charts, brochures, photos, and so on. These can be very helpful if people want to refer to your message in the future.
We've now covered the presentation process. We've looked at confronting your fears, preparing so well that you can't help but succeed, laying out your message in a logical, powerful progression, and finally, following up effectively. When you put all this together, you've got a strong presentation. And that's what you need in any organization. To succeed, you must communicate, and communicate very effectively. You need to make a great impression on everyone around you. You need to sell yourself and your ideas.
These 30 action tips will help make this happen. Think about them. Practice them over and over again.
The more you do it, the more confident you'll become. And that confidence will radiate to everyone around you.
You can make winning presentations. You can sell ideas. You can become a very effective communicator. And finally, you can hit new levels of professional and personal success. I'm Paul Tim.
And I'm Eileen Parkinson.